I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the murder of a father of three named Kouri Richins. Just before he died, he drank a Moscow Mule that prosecutors say was laced with fentanyl poison. Here's the story. Kouri and Kouri Richins seemed to be living the perfect little life. The attractive young couple had 3 young boys and were doing very well financially, living in Utah. They traveled, had a beautiful home, and spent a lot of family time with their boys. But beneath the exterior, something else was happening. Family members say Kouri suspected his wife of trying to poison him, giving him food and drinks laced with poison. Kouri got so suspicious that he changed his life insurance and will to give his money to his sister, who he trusted to take care of the kids. Now, prosecutors say Kouri was right. He died in March of 2022, a victim of fentanyl poisoning. After his death, Kouri wrote a book for her children to help them deal with the loss of their father. And just after the release of this children's book, Kouri was arrested and charged with the murder of her husband, Kouri. This is one of those stories when you look at, it's a family. They got 3 little ones at home. And this is dad. So, the motive to me is always very important. But I want to start here with how he died, because I think that's a lot of what this trial is going to be about, the debate about how Kouri Richins died. Let's begin with the prosecutor talking to us about the fentanyl and how much fentanyl we are talking about here.
1 or 2 pills might be accidental. 20 or 5 times the lethal dose is not accidental, Your Honor. That is someone who wants Kouri dead. And the person who benefited the most from Kouri being dead is the defendant.
And that's a lot of fentanyl. I mean, that is a lot. 5 times the lethal dose. This is a lot of fentanyl. We know how deadly it is in such small doses, which brings us to the first question in our investigation. And it's about the fentanyl. Where did the fentanyl come from? How did it get into his body, number 1, and number 2, how did it either get to the home or get to Kouri Richins, as prosecutors say? To me, it's a crucial part of this case, this story, and will be a critical part of the trial. Joining us, private investigator with more than 20 years experience, Jason Jensen is with us. Jason, so great to see you. This is a lot of fentanyl. And I guess there's going to be 2 different versions of how the fentanyl ends up in his body. But the bottom line is this doesn't strike me as an accident because, as the prosecutor said, how much we're talking about here.
Oh, I would agree with you. I mean, clearly, when it comes to ingestion of pills and that leads to your death, it either can only be homicide, suicide, or an accident. And like you're pointing out, by the sheer volume, since we know fentanyl's so lethal, that 5 times the lethal amount couldn't be an accident.
Let's take listen to the prosecution here talking about the fentanyl and how they believe the defendant, Kouri Richins, ended up using fentanyl. So this is what the case is about. This is their version of what happened here, but how she ended up using fentanyl to kill her husband.
With what the court just raised, she wanted something stronger. She learned that whatever she used on Valentine's Day wasn't strong enough, which is why she went back and asked for something stronger. But she had a similar MO, right? Her MO is to go to the drug dealer, procure fentanyl, and 2 or 3 days later, 4 days later, administer the fentanyl. That is the same. The drug is the same. The drug dealer is the same. The timing is the same. But she learned. She learned she needed something stronger. She also learned how to administer it. She administered it with a lemon shot, where Eric Richins would throw it back all at once. She says that in her journal article, her journal note at Exhibit 49.
That's an interesting little point there, the lemon shot, right? That he would throw it back with a lemon shot all at once. But it seems at the scene of the crime and the subsequent evidence that was gathered here, not from her journal, but from the evidence that it was a Moscow Mule was the vehicle. But let's get some clarity. Also joining us now, the attorney representing Eric Richins' family, Greg Skordas, is with us. Greg, let's start on that piece of information first. Lemon shot versus Moscow Mule. I've heard both, but I've been hearing more about the Moscow Mule. What are your thoughts on how prosecutors are going to allege the fentanyl was administered to Eric?
Exactly that way, Vinnie, through the Moscow Mule. It was given apparently to Eric to help him sleep, just a little toddy, if you will, at night. But it was laced with an incredibly high dosage of fentanyl. Jason talked about that a second ago, enough that it would do the job. And if you recall from the facts of this case, this wasn't the first attempt at Eric's life. There had been at least 2 prior incidents where he was poisoned, and and it didn't work. So that this time, I think Kouri wanted to make sure that there was enough in there to make sure the job got done.
And you know what's interesting about that? Originally, I've read some of the information connected to the case that she was thinking about the Michael Jackson drug, and she was which would be propofol, but that is not something that you can lace in a drink. That's something that has to be administered by a doctor, like Conrad Murray administered it to Michael Jackson. So it seems in this case, Jason, there is going to be evidence put forth that she tried to do it one way, she tried again, and she's dealing with some of the same people and trying to get the drugs to kill him with.
Right. I think the most damning piece of evidence is the fact that there's history that Eric expressed, because if it wasn't for that, there would be really nothing to tie this to Kouri directly. But because her husband feared it and expressed it and went so far as to change a life insurance policy beneficiary, yeah, it really built the history that was needed to make a prosecution sound.
And Greg, this is a situation where, and it'll be this for a jury, right? A jury's going to be sitting in the box and saying, well, wait a minute, if he thinks his wife is poisoning him, why is he drinking a Moscow Mule that she hands to him? It doesn't make sense to them. Can you give us a little more insight, which I think the jury is going to need as well, about Eric Richins and why he was still there, despite the fact that he was so suspicious, and why he would trust her in that moment in preparing a drink for him?
3 reasons, Vinnie. They're all little boys. They're the kids that he wanted to raise, that he wanted to be the father of. He wanted to maintain the family. Utah is certainly a state where family is paramount to just about anything, and he wanted to be the father of those boys. He was their soccer coach, he was their baseball coach, he was their basketball coach, and even though he knew the marriage was on the rocks, and even though he had suspicion, even told people that Kouri was trying to hurt him, he wanted to try to stay as a family and tried to be the father that he wanted those boys to have. And ironically, now they don't have a father.
Well, I hope the jury gets that message, because to me, the first time I heard this, I was like, well, wait a minute. And then when you hear about what kind of man Eric Richins was, it changes the equation. Now, there's going to be 2 sides to this, obviously. I want you to take a listen to the defense attorney cross-examining one of the detectives about the fentanyl.
Can you say with certainty that the pills that Ms. Lauber allegedly gave to Ms. Richins were the pills that were taken by Eric Richins, or the pills that were taken, if any pills were taken, by Eric Richins?
No.
And as you sit here right now, do you have any idea, like actual knowledge, not an idea, let me rephrase that, do you have any knowledge of how fentanyl got into Mr. Richardson's system? Mr. Richardson's system, I'm sorry.
No.
So I think there's going to be two parts to this, Greg, for the defense. I think one, they're going to say, well, maybe we don't know for sure, right? And that could be a reasonable doubt as to how he took the fentanyl. But then also try to establish that maybe he's taking drugs on his own. Maybe he has a drug problem. Maybe he has some lingering, issue or injury and he got hooked on drugs. Is there, do you expect that to happen, Greg, at trial?
Not effectively. There's no history at all that Eric had any substance abuse whatsoever. There's no history at all that he was anything but an outdoorsman and a family person who took care of himself, who did what he could to make himself healthy. If he needed something to help him sleep, obviously that's a little bit different situation. But he wasn't a person. There was never any hint that he was an opioid abuser, a fentanyl user, anything like that, or had an addiction to anything like that. And at the time in our country, even maybe today, fentanyl overdoses and opioid overdoses are rampant. And I think that it would have been anyone who wanted to kill him, in this case, if it was Kouri, would have assumed that a person who dies of a fentanyl overdose is just another overdose, and it'll be treated that way. And a homicide can be disguised as an overdose, and I think that's really what happened here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we read the headlines every day. We hear about it, and sometimes it's someone, well, we didn't know, we didn't expect. And the way the addiction comes across can start as, you wrench your back at work or something, and all of a sudden you're taking these pills, and then you need more, and your life unravels. But there doesn't seem to be evidence of that. The other part of this, Jason, is figuring out how Kouri Richins gets the fentanyl in her hands. And it seems like they've got some potential witnesses here, people that were helping around the house, whether it's a housekeeper or a handyman.
Right, exactly. From the intro piece that you played, they were talking about that there was a dealer involved. So if there's that record, a witness to come forward, or text history where there was such a request, yeah, it's going to be, pretty hard evidence to overcome.
Yeah, Greg, it seems that's where the prosecutor's going to put those pieces together, right? Because, you can't just go get fentanyl. You have to get it, somewhere nefariously, right? You have to get it from someone who's either dealing it illegally or somehow you come across these. What are your thoughts about how prosecutors can establish or make some connection between Kouri Richins and obtaining the deadly fentanyl?
Yeah, I mean, through some very good work by law enforcement and others, I think they put together a pretty good case for a housekeeper, woman who had her own drug problems, as a source of the fentanyl here. And I think that person's going to testify. I think others are going to testify. But you're right, you don't just go buy fentanyl. But in this day and age, it's more prevalent than ever because it is such a popular drug. It's being brought into our country every day. And the person that brought that drug into Kouri's possession is almost certainly going to testify how she got it, how much she was paid for it, and how she ended up giving it to Kouri to use in this Moscow Mule.
Guests are staying with us. We've got a lot more to get to. Coming up next, that book that she wrote for her children. Does that book make her look innocent or guilty?
This last year has been a living hell for our family.
You got 9 months of testimony, right? 4.5 hours, you come back and say, we got a verdict.
Not guilty of the crime of murder.
They're going to blame all this on you.
In this case, the jury was sequestered for 9 months.
Oh, my God.
These people were too beat down to even try to fight for their own conviction.
Trial and Error. Why did O.J. win? A Court TV original series. Season finale Sunday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
This last year has been a living hell for our family. We have watched as Kouri has paraded around portraying herself as a living widow and victim while trying to profit from the death of my brother.
Those are the words of Eric Richins' sister talking about the death of her brother and the reaction of Kouri Richins. Now, Kouri Richins appeared on Good Morning Utah to promote the release of her children's book after the murder. Take a listen.
My husband passed away unexpectedly last year, so it's March 4th was a 1-year anniversary for us, and he was 39. It completely took us all by shock. And we have 3 little boys, 10, 9, and 6. And, you know, my kids and I kind of wrote this book on the different emotions and grieving processes that we've experienced last year.
This is one of the strangest, I mean, absolute strangest facts in all of this. Because she's not under arrest yet, right? It's a year after Eric had died. She was not arrested, and then she goes very public and writes this children's book, and it goes on the local morning television. Which brings us to the next question in our investigation. Does the book make her look innocent or guilty? Is it in the eye of the beholder? Fascinating. Really strange fact in all of this. Okay, joining us to help us answer this question, the attorney representing the family of Eric Richins, Greg Skordas, and joining us, nationally known psychotherapist, host of Talking Live and the Bite Size podcast, and author of a book on killer spouses, Dr. Robbie Ludwig. All right, before I get to you, Dr. Robbie, what was it, Till Death Do Us Part, I believe?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Exactly. So, Greg, the writing of this book, give us some context, like what's happening in terms of the case, the investigation, what people are thinking, how the family's reacting, and all of a sudden she's out there on a mini book tour.
Well, the Richins family never gave up. They were always suspicious of her because of the history that we talked about in the last segment of Eric having been allegedly poisoned at least twice before he was ultimately killed. And so they felt that this was something they needed to pursue. They kept law enforcement involved in it. They kept the investigators involved. And so when she's out parading and trying to sell her book, it didn't surprise the family at all because of the personality, but they also felt like this needed to keep being pursued. And she obviously didn't think that she was in the crosshairs of anyone when she's out doing that. She probably felt that she was free and clear and was able to go sell her book and sort of peddle herself as a victim when it appears, at least from what the state's saying, that she was just the opposite.
All right, Dr. Robbie, before I get your take on it, I want you to listen to a passage from this grief book, dedicated to my amazing husband and a wonderful father. And then this is a piece of it. Yes, I am with you as you walk the halls of the new school, making new friends, meeting new teachers. I will sit at your desk next to you, teaching you, pushing you to try harder, and giving you my love when you succeed. A book, a story for children who've lost a parent. Dr. Robbie, does it make her look innocent or guilty?
Well, the book as a standalone doesn't make her look guilty or innocent, but in retrospect, it could influence the jury in terms of Kouri profiting off of her husband's death that she planned in advance. So if we look at it that way, it's not looking very good for her. And also, just to analyze it, it could be that Kouri thought her husband was a really good father, and she just preferred him dead. And so she could write a very glowing picture of him because he was no longer interfering with the life that she wanted to live. So it's very interesting to look at it from that perspective.
Do you think it could influence a jury, or is it, as I said before, like if you think she's guilty, this makes her look diabolically evil, right? But if you have some doubts, you're like, could you see someone looking at this and saying, oh, well, okay, you know,
maybe she didn't do it, and this is her way of trying to help the kids through the whole thing.
I think killers can have different sides and they can categorize their emotions. So it's very possible that Kouri wanted to assist her kids in grieving their father, and she wanted to be a mother in that way, but not enough not to kill her husband. So they both can go together quite seamlessly. You know, she liked her husband as a father, but not as a husband, and didn't want to be attached to him, wanted to get rid of him. Money was more important. Her lover was more important. And so it is twisted, and it gives us insight into her mind and how she could justify how she is a good person, even though she did what she did.
And Greg, as we talk about this, and obviously the context of the book is about the children, everyone at home right now is wondering, how are the children doing?
Fortunately, they're doing very well. They're with family members, they're thriving, and they're in a loving community, they're in a loving family, and they're moving forward, even though right now they don't have either parent by their side. But the Eric Richins family, Vinnie, is very close. I mean, these are people that met and had Sunday dinner more often than not. And so the kids are with the family that they had known and they'd grown up with. And so their life wasn't as disrupted as you might have expected from something like this. And by all accounts, they're doing very, very well.
That's great to hear. All right, guests are staying with us. Coming up, fasten your seatbelts. What is the significance of the so-called walk the dog letter? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the death of Eric Richins, a man who loved being a father and wanted to keep his family together. But he suspected his wife wanted him dead, and then he died. Here's the story.
Kouri Richins was working at Home Depot when she met her husband, Eric. Eric owned an extremely successful company and was doing very well financially. Eric and Kouri fell in love and started a family. They were raising 3 young boys when the marriage hit the rocks. There was tension over money connected to Kouri's struggling house flipping business and issues of infidelity. Things got so bad, Eric thought Kouri was trying to poison him. Eric died of fentanyl poisoning after drinking a Moscow Mule prepared by Kouri. Prosecutors say she laced the drink to get his money, but Kouri claims her innocence and may argue that Eric had a drug problem and OD'd. Either way, there are 3 boys without a dad and with a mom accused of murder.
Incredibly tragic story on many levels. And money, like, it's about money. And to me, that is, you've got 3 little children who, more than they need money, they need mom and dad. And whether you're together or separated, they need both of you. And now they basically have neither one of you. The good news is, as we heard, they are in good hands with Eric's family, but it's incredibly unnecessary and tragic in all of this. Now, this part of the story, I said the book was a strange twist. Well, there's another strange twist in all this. While she's incarcerated, investigators seize a letter that Kouri apparently wrote. And I don't know if she admits it was a letter, but it's known as the Walk the Dog letter, which is kind of a strange name because on the top it says Walk the Dog. And it seems like it was intended for Kouri's family, although it was found in an envelope that had her lawyer or her former lawyer's name on it all. I want you to hear this because there's this letter could be extremely incriminating in front of a jury. Take a listen.
She wants to link Eric getting the drugs and pills from Mexico, so we need some kind of connection. Her private investigator is doing some research on the ranch cartel place Eric would stay at. Here's what I'm thinking, but you have to talk to Ronnie. He would probably have to testify to this, but it's super short, not a lot to it. He will need to talk to Sky at the meeting next week. Upon information and belief, just like they say, a year prior to Eric's death, Ronnie was over watching football one Sunday, and Eric and Ronnie were chatting about Eric's Mexico trips. Eric told Ronnie he gets pain pills and fentanyl from Mexico from the workers on the ranch, but not to tell me because I would get mad because I always said he just gets high every night and won't help take care of kids. Ronnie should have texts from Eric talking about getting high as well. Eric told Ronnie he keeps them in an allergy pill bottle in his work truck so I wouldn't find them. Ronnie never told me about the conversation. Eric finally told me and asked if Carmen could get him some. Eric never wanted anyone to know he had an issue, especially get caught. He always wanted Kouri to go down for him. Reword this however he needs to make the point just to include it all. The connection has to be made with Mexico and the drugs. Ronnie will have the messages to prove Eric confided in him about getting high. He can be short and to the point, but it has to be done. When you talk to Ronnie about this, meet up with him in person. I worry sometimes your house and phone are bugged. Tell him I need him to do this. Bring me home, and then we will get those damn bitches. We're so close to the end. Let's push through. Have the conversation with Ronnie before he meets with Sky. Then tell him to tell Sky at the meeting about the conversation. Hang in there. We're almost there. Love you to the moon.
That's her brother, Ronnie, that she's talking about. And the way prosecutors are looking at this is that she is apparently trying to get her brother to say that Eric went down to Mexico to get drugs and that he would be the key witness that could somehow convince this jury that it was an overdose. So what role is this walk the dog letter going to play? Brings us to the next question in our investigation. What is the significance of the walk the dog letter? And you see on the top it says walk the dog. That would almost be the name of the movie, I think, if they made all this into a movie. Let's bring in our guest helping us through all this. The attorney representing the family of Eric Richins, Greg Skordas, is with us, and private investigator with more than 20 years experience, Jason Jensen. Greg, this is another bizarre twist in all of this, right? We've got death by fentanyl in a Moscow Mule. We've got this grief book that is written by Kouri. And now another writing by Kouri, this walk the dog letter. To me, I mean, I'm just reading it, like common sense. If I read it, it's like a guide to how to get someone to testify falsely to provide the information that could perhaps raise a reasonable doubt. That's the way I'm reading it.
And that's the way the government's going to paint it, Vinny. They're going to paint it as a narrative that Kouri was making to her mother to talk to her brother, Ronnie, and use sort of, make it easy for him, don't make it too complicated, and give it a story that Eric was addicted, that he was talking to her brother about that he was buying fentanyl from Mexico, none of which is true, none of which is corroborated by anything at all. But that was the narrative she wanted Ronnie to paint for the jury, because the defense here, of course, is that Eric died of an accidental self-inflicted overdose, not that he was poisoned or that he was killed. And so to the extent that she could point him as a drug user and as a drug addict, even through her brother, would help with that defense. It's so obvious that it is an attempt to get testimony, to get someone to testify in a certain way, even telling him exactly what to say and how to say it. And then, of course, at the top of the letter, she says, "Oh, and by the way, walk the dog," because she's thinking we're in a home stretch. I'm going to be home soon, and I'll be back with you, and we'll walk the dogs ourselves. So it's a really damaging letter. Of course, the defense is trying to keep it out, but it paints a pretty good picture for the state's case.
Yeah, and Jason, the circumstances surrounding it, we saw some of the video there. There was a search of the cell where they found it. It was an envelope, but she did put her attorney's name on it. She no longer represents Kouri Richins, but the attorney's name was on the envelope. But a plot like this, Jason, this is like It's either really smart or like really, really stupid, right? I guess if you get away with it, it's really smart because you're creating evidence that could potentially, have a juror think, once or twice about how this fentanyl was ingested and why it was. But the problem is they found the letter.
Right. Yeah, Vinnie, what's interesting about this is, sadly, family members are the last bastion of hope for a defendant. They want to believe that regardless of the evidence, that their family member is incapable of such a horrific act. So it's not unheard of for a suspect to try and unduly influence family members to corroborate false claims in order to sway a jury, create a false narrative in order to create reasonable doubt. So it seems like it's playing out that way. And what's most important about this walk the dog letter is not only is content important, but so is context.
Now, their argument is that it was an outline for another one of her books because she's such a prolific author, and we'll see how that plays. But Greg, the other thing about this is she kind of put her lawyer in the middle of all of this, right? She mentions the lawyer in the letter, and then puts her name on the envelope and almost puts her in the middle of this plot. And my goodness, I can't imagine any lawyer would get involved in something like that. You're not going to put your livelihood at risk for a client like this. And lo and behold, last time I checked, that lawyer's not a part of this case anymore.
That's exactly right. She withdrew not long after this letter was released. There may have been other reasons. We don't know that. She said that there was a conflict. She got the approval of the court to do that. And Kouri now has the public defenders assigned to that particular area. But, the letter, I think, speaks for itself. And the defense has done a pretty aggressive job, Vinnie, of trying to keep it out of evidence, saying that it was protected, that it was a letter in an envelope addressed to her attorneys, which would have been a privileged communication. But if you read the letter, it's not addressed to the attorney at all. It's addressed to her mother, and it talks about the attorney in the third person. So it's not like, hey, Sky, which was the name of her lawyer at the time, here's what I need you to do, and here's our plan. Here's some things you should be aware of. It's something for her mother to tell her lawyer what to do and to sort of lay out this story that has now been completely debunked, that her brother would tell, that Eric was confiding in him that he was using these opioids, this fentanyl.
Yeah, and the only way this works is if you have an unethical lawyer, which she didn't and doesn't now either. That's the only way a scheme like this could work, because any sort of communications you have with family on the phone or in ingoing and outgoing letters are going to be read. They're going to be screened. So we'll see. Well, but again, as you said, the big issue is, does it or does it not come in front of the jury? Jason, have you ever seen a plot like this before? Someone who's locked up trying to manipulate people on the outside?
Not to this extreme. I mean, there's been times where there's been correspondence sent to an attorney to disperse out to family members in that context, but not in any way to influence like this.
Yeah, this is beyond the pale. Jason Jensen, thank you so much. Appreciate your expertise and insight. Thank you so much. Greg's going to stick around. Still to come, what do we know about Kouri's lover?
Please do not allow Kouri to take advantage and make a mockery of our justice and legal system anymore. She has done enough. Please do not allow Kouri to take advantage and make a mockery of our justice and legal system anymore. She has done enough. Please do not allow Kouri to hurt Eric's memory, our family, friends, and community anymore. We have been through enough.
So when you look at this story and you look at this death and this alleged murder, what is the motivation behind it? Well, from the beginning, we've always talked about Kouri Richins has this house flipping business, and she needed money, and Eric was supporting this business, which wasn't doing well, and was finally cutting her off from continuing this house flipping venture. But there's something else at play here. Kouri also has a lover, Take a listen to some of their text messages.
If I was divorced right now and asked you to marry me tomorrow, would you? I just want to lay on the couch and cuddle you, watch a murder documentary and snuggle. I want you today, every day, not just sexually, but physically, mentally. Every day when I wake up, I do want a future together. I do want you. Figure life out together. If you could just go away and you could just be here, life would be so perfect. I love you. I have a crazy dream. You quit your job, I divorce and come up with millions and millions. We buy Midway and live in the guest house and rent out the huge house as a big event center. $15,000 a day like they charge down the road. Maybe $12,000 to stay competitive, and we will just run the event center as our daily job and hang out every day, raise some kids, have a little farm. Deal? To me, you're worth millions a year. I'm honored to be your friend, best friend actually, lover, go-to. Life is going to be different, I promise. You're one hell of a patient person. I hate your hard days. I wish I could be there to turn them around for you. Can I try Friday? Give me a few days. Hang in there until then, please. Love you.
There's more at play here. Yeah, there's money, but there's, this as well, which brings us to the next question in our investigation. Could loom very large in the trial. What do we know about Kouri's lover? What do we know about the relationship? Was it as intense as it sounded in those text messages? And what role will Kouri's lover play in the trial? Still with us, the attorney representing the family of Eric Richins, Greg Skordas, and joining us, nationally known psychotherapist, host of Talking Live and the Bite Size podcast, author of a book on killer spouses, Till Death Do Us Part, Dr. Robbie Ludwig. Dr. Robbie, what do you think of those text messages? Does that sound like the real deal?
Well, it sounds like Kouri really believed that she was in love. And I imagine she's the type of person who sees people as all good or all bad and nothing in the middle. And clearly she was idealizing her lover and the life that they would have together. So she clearly saw this lover as someone who was good, who was going to make her happy. They could be rich together and raise kids. So it was very clear in her mind what she wanted to do with him.
All right, Greg, what do we know about Kouri's lover?
Well, we know that he has been contacted by the state, and he may very well be a witness. The state's been kind of coy on that a little bit, Vinny, whether or not he is going to testify. My guess is that he will, but I don't have any inside information on that. If he does, and he corroborates these text messages, and he corroborates the plan that they have together and their affair, it certainly helps the state's case a lot, because while motive isn't an element of a crime, it's not something that needs to be proven. It's something the jury is always concerned about. And what was the motive here? Was it money? Was it sex? Was it whatever? And some combination of all of the above, it sounds like it. And I think that's what the state's going to try to portray. And if they put him on the stand, which I believe they will, he will sort of fit that picture that the state's trying to put together.
Yeah, Dr. Robbie, it seems like there is more to this alleged motive in the case. I think money seems to be a driving force because they're talking about the money as well. But it seems like she is planning some level of a future with her lover.
Mm-hmm. And it's very convenient to have a dead spouse where you inherit a lot of money versus a divorce where you may not get any money at all. And Kouri is a disturbed person. I think that we could, observe that in her interactions with people, her history, the dog walking letter. This is a girl who really feels that she can create the life she wants to create and play by her own rules, even if those rules are not moral. She makes it okay for herself. And so all the pieces of the puzzle are really fitting together, where we see somebody who basically portrays nothing's going to get in the way of her having what she wants or who she wants.
Greg, if he does testify for the state, for the prosecution, is he vulnerable on cross-examination in any way?
That's a good question. You wonder what his vulnerability would be. And I guess the question would be, what's in it for him? Did he get some quid pro quo from the government? That is to say, we won't prosecute you. I don't think they would have had a good case against him anyway, because there's no evidence that he poisoned Eric. So I don't know that he'd be very vulnerable. If he comes and testifies and he corroborates those text messages that you just read, Vinny, I think that's pretty compelling. And if I was a defense attorney, which I do, but that's what I primarily do, I would try to stay away from him, because he could really hurt the defense if you get too deep into this relationship and his motive or whatnot. I mean, he's part of this, but in a tangential way that's going to probably end up helping the state if he testifies.
And Dr. Robbie, how about what that moment would be like if he comes in and is testifying for the state, providing information that makes her look more guilty? What do you think that moment will be like for her and for him?
Well, I'm sure for him it's very scary to be involved with somebody who actually could murder their spouse. I'm sure she presented as very charming and ingratiating and fun. You know, sometimes sick personalities can appear very fun at first. And I imagine Kouri would feel very betrayed, but she's somebody who's looking after herself. So if she needs to cut him loose in order to move forward, she's somebody who could definitely do that. But no, it would be very damaging to hear what this lover thought of his former girlfriend, and if he had any inkling at all about what she was up to. But he could really seal the deal in this case.
And Greg, is there any indication that Eric knew about this?
There is some indication about that. That's a good question. And he knew that the marriage was on the rocks. He knew that there were problems. And Dr. Robbie said it better than I could have a minute ago, which was that he was worth a lot more to her as a widow than as a divorcee. And I think that once he realized the marriage was on the rocks for whatever reason, because she was having an affair or because she was trying to kill him, whatever his thought was, she recognized that because of the prenuptial agreement and whatnot, that she was going to get a lot more money if he died than with a divorce.
Greg Skordas, Dr. Robbie Ludwig, thank you both so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You know, anytime you have a spousal murder case and the accused has a lover, it raises a huge red flag. Now, cheating on your spouse does not make you a murderer. Every defense attorney will tell you that. But cheaters, by definition, don't have the same commitment to a relationship that non-cheaters do, which makes it sometimes a lot easier for juries to convict. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.